You're listening to the Small Business Talk podcast with Cathy Smith, episode 63.
Small Business Talk is a podcast for business owners and entrepreneurs who want a better way to run their businesses without spending years doing it the hard way. Small Business Talk is hosted by Cathy Smith, who has run the same marketing agency for more than 17 years and helped hundreds of business owners achieve their marketing goals.
Welcome to Small Business Talk. Today, my guest is Jo Morrison from GoGo Mojo Coaching. Welcome, Jo.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Jo, would you like to tell us a little bit about what GoGo Mojo Coaching is all about and why you're here?
GoGo Mojo Coaching is all about supporting people to grow their careers or build their businesses. I spend a lot of time working at the University of Sydney in the Incubate program, which is for students wanting to build startup businesses. And I've now brought that skill set across to help people online who want to build their careers, renew or reset their career paths.
Fabulous. And Sydney is a long way away from where you are now because you're in southern Western Australia.
That's right. GoGo Mojo is actually named after a beer that I invented. Long story short, I won a competition. I came over to WA to brew a beer at Little Creatures, where my now partner was the brewer who helped bring GoGo Mojo, the beer, to life that day. A few months later, I found myself living in WA.
Wow, that's incredible. Jo and I actually know each other from a mastermind that we're involved in, and I didn't know that. I knew that your partner was the brewer, but I didn't know how you'd met. So there you go.
I like to say I won him in a competition, but he doesn't necessarily like that.
Fair enough too. And today we're going to be talking about, is it the right time to be thinking about starting a business? With everything that's going on in the world, you might have a bit of time on your hands. So is starting a business something you should be working on? What do you think, Jo?
Well, I think it's always a good time to be thinking about what you want in life. And I think sometimes having some downtime away from the day-to-day can be a really opportune time to actually take stock and think about where we want to go in the future.
Excellent, because, some people will need to be looking at different types of employment. Some people may not even want to be employed again. It may be a case of now is the time to do that thing that they've always had in their back pocket and they really wish that they've had a chance. So where would you suggest our audience start when they're thinking about whether their hobby or that special thing may be suitable for a business?
I think they can really start by getting some ideas down on a piece of paper. I think there can be a real over-complication with business planning. And in the first early stages, it's really about working out whether this is something that you love and you would like to look to have a commercial element to it, whether it is a hobby and it is just something you love and you want to focus on that. Getting some thoughts down on a piece of paper about where you would see it going, what you think the potential opportunities are there. So I guess a form of a mind map rather than a bland, boring business plan that you might submit to a bank to try and get finance, for example. So starting with some basics there.
And I think putting it on paper is actually really good because it does cement it in your brain and it takes away that sort of panic when you sit in front of a computer screen and there's just a blank screen, there's nothing there. Paper just seems to make it come to life so much easier.
It does. There's something quite friendly about paper, I think, compared with a computer screen. I also like to borrow my stepkids' felt tip pens and art paper, which, might sound a bit weird to some people, but I think there's something in using a bit of colour and creativity and not feeling like you have to be trapped into boring black and white to really look at what your plan might be for your future.
Absolutely. And especially if you are that creative type of person, the colour can really bring it to life, whereas sometimes black and white can make it stifling. So even though it's a good idea and it might be something you want to go forward with, because it's black and white, you might dismiss that idea.
Yeah, that's right. And I think you can also categorize things. So thinking about what activities you would like to do day to day, what would you like to be doing more of in your day to day? Then maybe you can go into the more things like, how would I make money? how can I test to see if people will pay for this product or service? So there's a number of tests you can run before you even get to the point where you decide if this is something you want to move forward with.
Absolutely, because a lot of times the business is great. It's an absolutely fabulous idea. Your friends and family say, oh, yeah, that's terrific. But would they actually put their dollars down? And that's one point too, to remember that your friends and family are generally not your audience. So even though it's good to talk to them about it and get a few ideas, you really do need to go to your peer group and to the people that will be your actual audience, your potential customers.
Definitely. Also, I think it's important not to be put off by people saying they wouldn't necessarily buy it, because that's feedback, right? That's not necessarily a shutdown and an absolute no. That's a maybe you need to work on this idea a little bit further, or maybe you need to think a little bit laterally and add another idea to it. What could you combine or change? Could you run it in a different format? I mean, my business is entirely online. I generally don't meet with clients face-to-face. I coach entirely over the phone. So in terms of the current job market and what's happening out there with people working from home, that's something that a space I've already been in that people used to think was weird. When you're thinking about your business idea, don't just look at what's happening right now. Think about where society is going to go in the next 6, 12, 24 months, 5 years.
And I think there's a couple of things we can talk about there. Is just because they've said no, they may not be your actual customer. I'm married, so if somebody came to me and said, would I use a marriage celebrant, or would I be looking for a wedding dress, or would I be going down any of those sort of things, I'm going to say no, because I have no intentions of getting married again. Depends on the person you're talking to, whether they're actually your customer or not. And like you said about looking outside your industry and where the society is going, who would have thought 5 years ago that we'd be jumping in strangers' cars and using an app to drive from place to place? Times move rather quickly. Yes, definitely look a bit further ahead than just this current crisis.
Yes, for sure. And I think that's not to underplay, we spoke about this just before we started, it's not to underplay the number of people that have been displaced by the current situation happening in the world. But I think if you can really keep your mindset straight, you've got a lot more chance of being able to come up with a creative solution, or to be able to move roles or move industries. But also, if you're somebody who has come from a hospitality or beauty industry or something that's been hit really hard by this, what have you spotted during your time in that industry that maybe you can work on as a business idea?
Absolutely. And it might be a case of you're seeing that the particular business that you're working in has some gaps. So it may be a case of you being able to work in a similar market or a similar area with your business because you know how to fill those gaps.
Yeah, for sure. If you can flip that again and say, well, that's actually quite exciting. Not everything about what's happening right now needs to be doom and gloom. There are also going to be a bunch of opportunities coming out of the other side of this. It's just that right now we're so far in it that it's hard to see what's on the horizon right now. You can be the person that is looking towards the horizon.
And as we know, most grey clouds have a silver lining. And yes, it's hard, and we definitely feel for the people that have been shut down. But unfortunately, dwelling in it and upsetting our mindset's not going to help anybody. It's just going to make us worse. So on that note, if you are not feeling okay, if you are having some issues, please do reach out. There's lots of services all over the world that can help you because, as most people know, we have an international audience. So this is a global problem at the moment. So if you aren't feeling okay, please don't suffer in silence. There's lots of ways that you can reach out, even if you are self-isolating. Jump on the internet and find a service near you.
I think the other part of that is who you choose to work with going forward, right? Because you've probably got a bunch of co-workers who are in the same boat, making time to check in on them and have those conversations. But then also maybe between a few of you can start to explore an opportunity, because lots of brains can be better than one brain. Maybe there's an opportunity for you to get together remotely, safely, social distancing, potentially brainstorm some ideas for what you can see happening in your industry and what business you might be able to create around that.
Absolutely. And don't just discount people that are not in your industry, because sometimes if you look outside your industry, you can actually incorporate their kind of ideas, things that have been done forever and ever in their industry but have never been brought into yours. And that might be just the new impetus that you need to transform your industry.
That's right. There is something in there about working with a co-founder or founding a business with another person. I think getting together and really mapping out what you both might want out of that business in the longer term can really avoid a lot of problems later on. I speak with quite a few founders who started off and it's all been happy families, but as they've got further in, they've realized that they really want different things out of life. Making sure that your life path is not necessarily the same as your co-founder or your business partner, but that you've at least had the conversation of where do we see this business going? How do we want to live our lives? Do we want to work business hours? Does one of us have a lot of family responsibilities outside of hours? And that real open dialogue can make sure that you avoid some of those problems later on when things maybe aren't going quite so well.
And I think it needs to be a values match too. If your values are quite different to the person that you're thinking of going into business with, think about that as a long-term thing. Is that going to work for you, or is that a value that you just can't move forward? At the beginning stages, sometimes you have to just step back a little, be a bit more analytical. They might be your best friend, they might be your best co-worker, but is this somebody that you could be sitting on your porch in 50 years' time going, look what we've made, isn't it fabulous? Or is this somebody you're not going to be talking to again in 5 years' time? So sometimes you just need to take that step back.
Yeah, there's a bit of a weighing up, because if you work solo, you can do whatever you like, right? You're in charge, and a lot of people love that. But there are people in the world who prefer to have somebody to work with and share that idea, share the risks, but also share the rewards and the responsibilities. If you choose to work alone, you can definitely access support outside of your business. I mean, I'm part of a really supportive mastermind group. I have a coach myself. I have mentors. And there's so much information available online as well to support anybody looking to see whether they should transform from a hobby into a business.
And I think that is really important, once again, not to struggle in silence. And the great thing about working by yourself is the buck stops with you. The bad thing about working by yourself is the buck stops with you. If you're not somebody who can follow something right through to the end, if you love the shiny objects, but once the tarnish is starting to set in, it's not where you want to go, then maybe you do need to look at, if not a founder with you, maybe a good solid team. So just think about the person you are and then what sort of business structure and setup you might need to be looking at.
Definitely. And I think also looking at the way you will sell your product or service is super important. There'll be marketplaces out there that maybe you haven't even considered or that you don't know about. There's different places that specialize in selling different sorts of products and services. Doing some research about how you'll make your money and where your audience lives is a really good starting point as well.
Absolutely. And the way that your audience likes to consume their information too. So it's no point going absolutely gung-ho on Instagram if your audience is not on Instagram, even though it's the latest, greatest thing. Same as TikTok. If TikTok is not where your audience is going to be, then don't invest all your time making silly little videos just to amuse yourself, because your business will die before it even starts.
I also think it's important to think about, as you're creating the business, what assets you're creating. Is the greatest amount of value coming from your mailing list? Is it coming from a particular product that you sell? Because that then leads into what your future plans are in terms of an exit strategy.
That's really important if you're looking at doing any sort of MLMs. Are you able to actually get that data? Do you get the mailing list? Can you keep the mailing list? Can you use it if you're then not with that MLM in the future? So you just need to be thinking about those sort of things in advance, because that data is gold. So you need to be able to actually access that further down the track if you're not selling the product that you started with, or you've moved into some other slightly different area.
Yeah, for sure. Also thinking about what your income goals are, because if you're somebody who is currently employed and you're earning a certain level of income, it can put a lot of strain on yourself personally, for your family, if you jump too soon without having really thought through the financials.
And sometimes it's better to do it as a side gig to start with, but that can be very hard as well. So just be weighing up the time that you actually have and the passion that you have for this business before you decide to go one way or another. And it might also be a case of getting some professional advice before you do decide to get rid of that highly paid job.
Yes. In a lot of ways, it's a lot less stress when the salary turns up in your bank account versus having to go out and hustle for the money. Being an entrepreneur or being a business founder is certainly not for everybody. So it's really thinking about the sort of person that you are and whether you need that security or whether you almost thrive on a bit of uncertainty.
Yes, you definitely have to be flexible, prepared to take risks, prepared for everything to change in an instant when you're a business owner.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is a good time for anybody who is thinking about this as an option to really dig into some of the things we've spoken about and work out a bit of a plan, because it's so important. You have a starting point, but then, what would you do next? I mean, if you could do anything over the next 3 weeks that involved starting a business, what would your next steps be? This is a perfect time to do a bit of experimentation. It's pretty low risk, really. There's so much change going on out there. Why not actually see where your dream or your business idea might go?
And I think that's perfect, because a lot of people will have some downtime and some thinking time. So don't waste it all watching Netflix or any of the other streaming things. Actually think about where your future needs to go and how you can make it happen. All right, so we've covered quite a few things there. Is there anything else that you think we should be talking about, Jo, that we have missed?
Should talk a little bit about the fear, and I know you have a good definition about the word fear. Really putting yourself out there and starting to talk to people about what your dream is can be scary. You worry that people, when I launched my business, I'm pretty sure my parents still don't really understand what I do. Trying to explain to people that, I'm an online business and career coach is something that just didn't exist. It probably really even 5 years ago. Being confident in what you're trying to do, but also not necessarily taking on board a bunch of other people's opinions. It's your dream. You have every right to that dream. Having some faith in yourself that you can see it through.
And my definition of fear is false evidence appearing real. So anytime you think something's fearful, just check out how much of it is false evidence, and then see if you can just work on that anxiety and flip it around and make it excitement, and then see if that can quell your fear slightly and help you move on.
Yeah, for sure. I've got a couple of processes that I run through with clients to help them work out whether it's the right move for them, because it can be really difficult when you're super close to your idea. You hold it really precious, and you sometimes can fear by sharing it loses its shine, or someone might steal your idea. I think there's something in that, actually. The fear that we can hold, if I talk about this, someone will get in and steal my idea. I think it's important to be open to share, because that's the only way you'll get feedback. And also remember that you're a unique person with a unique skill set. So the way that you do something and the spin or the angle that you take will not be identical to everybody else. There are a lot of people online offering career and business coaching. I know my lane, and I know what my specialty is. I know that I can offer something that other people can't, because I offer it in my own way. I think really being confident that you have something to offer the world, and then working out what your messaging is to get that out there and sell that to your audience who want to hear from you.
And I think that's really important too. A lot of the work I do with web design, you say to people, who are your audience? And they say everybody. No, you can't sell to everybody. And selling to everybody is selling to nobody, as we spoke about before with a marriage celebrant. That's not an audience for everybody. So you need to really think about your niche. Who's actually going to benefit, or who has the problem that you're able to solve? So think about who your person is, who that ideal customer is, that absolute one. And sometimes people say it's a really good thing to think about you a few years ago. Is this a problem that you've had maybe 3-4 years ago, and how you overcome it? If that's where you want to work in your business idea, if you're helping somebody, think about the you of the past if that's the problem that you're overcoming.
Yeah, because I think we all need mentors, and we need people who are a few years ahead of us in our business journey, so that we've got people to look up to in our own industries, also people that we admire. I always think it's funny when you see these authors, because there is no such thing as overnight success, right? There's people, people have done years of work in the background to get to where they are, but they sort of suddenly almost burst onto the scene. Maybe they've had a book published and it's gone viral, and you almost get a bit rock starish about approaching those people, but they're people, right? They've worked hard behind the scenes to get where they are. And they will appreciate you reaching out and saying, I really enjoyed that book, or, thanks for sharing that information, and those sorts of things. And really making sure you can learn from people who are already a few years ahead of where you are, because that's how you have aspiration to get to where you want to be. If you can't see it, how can you be it, as the saying goes? You need somebody to aspire to.
Absolutely. And I think that's really important to sort of look at those people and look further ahead and remember that they just are people. And of course, the overnight success, 10 years in the making, is always a classic one. I had that exact sort of situation. I went to Melbourne, which is 3,000 kilometres away from where I live, to a networking event for WP Elevation. And I met Troy Dean, who's actually been recently on the podcast. And I was just in awe. I'd heard him speak and all of this stuff. And of course, he's a very lovely, ordinary man. Not ordinary and boring, but he's just a man. He's no bigger or smaller than any other man. And it was just really interesting to see that one of my idols was real. Yeah, we were talking about it in the pre-run recently when we did the podcast. And it was really good. And you sometimes even feel a bit of stardom when they remember you after a certain amount of time, because once they become that pseudo-famous or actual famous, then they meet a lot of people. So just remember that they are people. And also, of course, when you get famous, and you will one day if you work hard enough, think about the people that are under you, and always remember to treat people with respect, because you never know where they've come from or what they've done, or that they're admiring to be just like you.
Yes, I think that's so true. And also not being worried about reaching out. If you're thinking about getting started in your industry, or you've got an idea and you can spot somebody online that you think might be able to help you, as long as you're really clear about boundaries and you don't become stalkerish, because nobody wants that. It's sending them an email to say, is there any possibility you can give me 15 minutes of your time? I've got a bunch of questions. All they can say is yes or no. And if you phrase that in a way that's really, I'm looking for some ideas or some feedback, if they're open to it, they'll say yes. And if they're not, they'll say no. And either way, you've asked the question and you've gotten an answer. And if they're not the right person, then keep looking and find somebody else that may be able to play more of a mentor type role in your life.
Absolutely. And I think we're in that kind of context too. It's really important to let them know that you actually do know who they are and what they've done. So you might reference a podcast or an article or something that you have been following that's been interesting, not just a straight, here I am, help me out sort of thing. Give them some kudos. And if you've bought their book, make sure you do a review. Or if you're listening to their podcast, give them a 5-star iTunes so that you can actually give them some value as well.
Definitely. I just had a yes from an email that I wrote to an author whose book I really enjoyed. And I said, can I share some of your ideas and content out online? I'm happy to obviously reference you in full. And if you would like anything else in return, to let me know. And she came back to me and said, I just want that information to get out in the world. So I'm more than happy for you to share that information with a book credit at the bottom of the article. When I sent the email, I was like, I don't know what sort of response I'm going to get. But I didn't let the fear stop me from sending the email. I sent it and I got a positive response. So most people in the world are willing to help if you ask. But the difference is a lot of people just don't ask.
Absolutely. And if you do that book credit back to their actual website, then that actually is good for Google and their backlinks as well. So you're actually giving a lot more value than you realise there. So just be careful with your credits and make sure that if at all possible, you're sending it back to their website as opposed to social media or Amazon. Obviously, if they don't have a website or they don't have relevant information on it, then yeah, social media is the next best thing. But if you can give it to the actual page on the website that's referencing the information, they'll be more than happy.
Some good tips right there.
There you go. All right, excellent. Jo, where can people find you if they would like to know more?
So my website is gogomojo.com.au. I also have Facebook and I'm very active on LinkedIn. So you can look me up on LinkedIn, Jo Morrison. I offer a range of programs, including one that will help people decide whether they want to take their hobby into more of a business, and also career growth coaching to help people, especially at this difficult time. If you're looking to get your resume revamped, trying to look at what skill sets you have that can move across industries. I can help you dig into that, and we can really get you some action steps that you can take to build your career or grow your business.
Excellent. So we'll put all of that in the show notes so that people can find it easily. Okay, so at this stage, I ask all my guests 5 final questions. So are you game, Jo?
I certainly am.
Okay, we've talked a bit about mentors, so let's see what kind of gold you can give us about your mentor. What is the best advice you've been given by a mentor?
The best advice I was given was when I went into my first director or leadership role. I was asking about how on earth I deal with having staff across multiple geographical locations. And this person came back to me and said, "You've got to trust." I think it was such a simple thing. And I was panicking almost about how I was going to control the situation rather than really having faith that most people in the world have got it together and are more than capable of self-managing. So I really learned a valuable lesson that day that I needed to be more open to trust.
Absolutely. And especially when you start getting employees, that is definitely one thing you need to do. You need to give them the skills to do their job, the information to do their job, and then trust that they will do it. Maybe not your way, but they will do it. Trust and let them go. So yes, I've definitely learned that one as well. What is the biggest help you've received since starting your business?
I've been really amazed and I've really appreciated the number of people who've gone on and written me a recommendation. I put a bunch of requests out there to people I've worked with in the past and current clients, and people taking the time to give you positive feedback, whether it's via LinkedIn, whether it's a review on your Facebook page, you know that they've had to take time out of their day to do that. So I feel a massive sense of appreciation anytime anybody takes the time to give me that feedback publicly, because it's so helpful to me in so many ways.
Absolutely. Okay, what is the one thing that you have to do every day, your non-negotiable?
Exercise. So
very good.
I'm a morning person in terms of exercise, and because you just got to get it done. I'm certainly no athlete. The mental health benefits, just extreme. I know if I haven't gotten up and done a walk or gone to a class, which is obviously not an option right now so much, I don't have such a good day. So exercise is key for me.
Well, you could still do an online class. There's a lot of apps at the moment giving exercise classes and exercise programs for free.
Yeah, that's true.
Definitely Google some of those at the moment, and don't make that an excuse not to do it. Okay, what is your favourite business book and why?
My favourite is called Getting to Yes, Negotiating an Agreement Without Giving In, because I always found that was something I struggled with. And the book is it takes a number of different angles around how to negotiate an agreement. And it's all about creative ways to get to yes. It's been a really helpful resource for me in business, but also in life.
Wow. We're coming up with some absolute fabulous ones. And while you were just saying that, I'd seen a post earlier in the day where people were looking for book recommendations. So I think we might collate all the different books that our guests have said and put them into a post so that while people do have downtime, they can go back and have a look at a few of the fabulous books that people have recommended. So we'll add yours to the list.
Definitely. Most of the libraries are offering the ebook service too online, so we can look them up that way rather than having to get the physical books, if that's an issue right now for most of us.
Perfect. And of course, Kindle too. And no doubt Amazon will be offering some sort of free trial or something along the lines of that. So there should be no barrier to being able to get an electronic book at the moment. And our very last question is, what do you wish you had known when you first started out?
I think I wish I'd known that it was okay to be nervous. Use that energy for good. Don't use it as an excuse not to get started, because every day you're learning something, right? So you keep moving forward.
And do you know the good and the bad thing about that? Nearly 19 years into business, I still get nervous sometimes. And I beat myself up and then I go, don't be silly, get out there and do it. Being an introvert, sometimes being in front of people just makes me nervous. Yeah, although you wouldn't know with a lot of the public speaking and things I do now, but sometimes I really have to get my mindset to get out and do it. So yes, that doesn't go away. Just learn how to use it.
Yeah, take the power and use it for good.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Jo. Appreciate your time. And we had a rocky start getting this together. So I really appreciate you hanging there and being willing to reschedule a couple of times. So thank you, Jo. And we wish you the best in business and stay well and stay healthy.
Thanks, Cathy. Great to chat.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't forget to subscribe to Small Business Talk podcast and head on over to smallbusinesstalk.com.au/downloads for all the show notes and links to this episode. Remember, to be great, you must start. Pick one tip from today's episode, take action and implement it. Let's meet again next week at the same time and place. Until then, take action. And SBT community, enjoy your journey.